Even though his body was about 20 feet long, his brain was the size of a ping pong ball. Not too smart. I like the stegosaur, but there's one thing about him I do not like. And I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute, okay? This one is the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Unless he lives south of the Rio, then he is Tyrannosaurus Mex. He had a pretty good sized head, almost the size of a Volkswagen. This is a replica of one of his teeth. And he had big toenails. Now, his front fingernails were a little smaller than this, but they looked about the same, which means he had to be very careful when he picked his nose. If you bump him in the elbow while he's picking his nose, he'll be mad at you for 2 weeks. I like the Triceratops. I like the T-Rex, but there's one thing about him I do not like. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute. This is the plesiosaur. The plesiosaur had 4 flippers and a very long neck, up to 20 feet long. And when he gets a sore throat, it's a very serious problem. I like the plesiosaur, but there's one thing about him I do not like. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute, okay? This one is the Styracosaurus. Now, kids, I've been studying dinosaurs for a long time. I cannot prove this, but I think this is probably the dinosaur that invented hairspray. I like Styracosaurus, but there's one thing about him I do not like. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute, okay? This is my Blondosaurus. And here is the Triceratops. The Triceratops had 3 horns on his face. We have in our museum a copy of a baby Triceratops horn. The biggest Triceratops horn was about 6 feet long. Pretty big. I like the Triceratops. But there's one thing about him I do not like. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. This one is the Parasaurolophus. He's having a bad hair day. I like the Parasaurolophus. But there's one thing about him I do not like. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute. And this one is Barney the Dumbosaurus. Beep. All right. I like all the dinosaurs. But there's one thing about all the dinosaurs I just can't stand. And I'm going to tell you about that right now. The one thing about all the dinosaurs that makes me so angry, every time you go to the library and check out a book about dinosaurs, you open up to the first page, and it says, millions of years ago. Now just hold on a minute. Do they know that, or do they think that? They think that. I don't think there's any way they can know that. Whenever somebody says to me, millions of years ago, I just say, excuse me, were you there? No, they weren't there. But all the books are going to tell you dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. I just don't think that's a scientific fact. That might be somebody's theory, it might be somebody's wild idea, but I think there's a much better theory to explain the dinosaurs. Now, here's the way science works. I'm going to give you my theory, and then you're supposed to try to prove it's wrong. Anybody can make up a theory, and then other scientists try to prove it's wrong. Okay, fair enough? I'm going to present my theory about dinosaurs, and then you can, after we're done here, say, Mr. Hovind, I think you're wrong because of, and you give me your scientific evidence why I'm wrong. Fair enough? Here goes my theory. Now pay attention. I believe the world was created in 6 days about 6,000 years ago. I don't think it's millions of years old. And then I think 4,400 years ago there was a giant flood that completely destroyed the world. A guy named Noah built a big boat and saved all the critters on board. Now, before that flood came, things were very different. From the creation up until the flood, people lived to be really, really old, like over 900 years old. Adam was 930 when he died. Now, during this time, when people are living to be really, really old, strange things would happen to the reptiles, because reptiles never stop growing. You know, reptiles grow all their life. They never stop. You're going to stop growing. When you're 16 or 18, you're going to quit growing, at least vertically. Reptiles never stop growing. Now tell me, what would happen to a reptile if you let him live in the Garden of Eden and live to be 900 years old? Get really big. I think dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago. I think they were big lizards that lived in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Big lizards. And then, to top it off, I think Noah took dinosaurs on the ark. You say, oh, come on now, just hold on a minute. I'm going to give you my theory, and then you're going to try to prove I'm wrong. Here's my theory. I think he took dinosaurs on the ark. You say, come on, dinosaurs are kind of big, aren't they? Well, the big ones were big, but the little ones were little. And Noah was 600 years old when he went on that boat. I bet he was smart enough to figure out you don't have to bring the biggest ones you can find. You bring 2 babies. Just be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. That'll be important later, okay? There's all kinds of reasons for bringing babies on the ark. That's just common sense, okay? We cover that on our video number 3. And then, after that flood was over, the world changed quite a bit. People didn't live to be 900 anymore. They only lived to be 400 years old, and then down to 200, and then down to 100. And today, hardly anybody makes it to 100. Actually, lifespans of people got real short back just 1,000 years ago, called the Dark Ages. I mean, they were only living to be 30, 40, 50 years old, and they died, most of them. Some lived to be 100 still, but generally, lifespans were pretty short. And now they've improved in the last, few centuries. That's because of better medicine, better diet, stuff like that. Not at all because of evolution. We're just, better nutrition. So I think they were living 900 years before the flood, and then it dropped off to 400, and then 200, and then 100, and, not many make it to 100 today, but a few do. And this, of course, affected the reptiles. The dinosaurs that got off the ark faced a whole different world. They simply couldn't live to be 900 anymore, so they couldn't get as big. They actually had 2 problems. People were killing them. They called them dragons. Let me just tell you my theory, and then you prove I'm wrong, okay? I don't think they were called dinosaurs because the word dinosaur wasn't even made up till 1841. How could they call them a name that didn't exist? They called them dragons. And all through history, there are thousands of stories of people killing dragons. Beep, back. Lots of stories of people killing dragons. And as the population of people began to grow after the flood, the population of dragons began to go down because nobody wants to live next door to a dragon. Same thing happened right here in this county. How many grizzly bears are roaming loose in the woods right now in this county? 0. How many were there 500 years ago? Probably thousands of them, right? Well, what happened? Well, you see, folks, when people move into an area and civilize it, the big ferocious animals are driven off or killed off. Nobody wants to live next door to a grizzly bear. The same thing happened to the dragons. Hey, if it came on the evening news tonight that there were 5 grizzly bears roaming around the woods in this county, do you know what would happen by 6 o'clock in the morning? Every redneck in 4 states would be out there with a rifle trying to shoot them. And whoever could shoot the biggest one would be a hero. They'd have his picture in the paper. Hey, Bubba shot the grizzly bear and saved the village. That's exactly what would happen. And I think that's what happened to the dinosaurs. I think people killed most of them. They called them dragons. I'm just giving you my theory now, and then you're going to prove I'm wrong, okay? They called them dragons. Do you know there are dinosaurs and dragons found on ancient pottery and ancient artwork? There's an old brick wall from Babylon, shows dragons on it, from 600 BC. That brick wall was built way back here, 600 years before Christ. How did they know about dragons in 600 BC? Alexander the Great conquered part of India in 300 BC, and he said his soldiers were scared by dragons when they conquered some of the cities. This Roman mosaic was made 200 years after Christ, and it shows long-necked dinosaurs on it. Now here they are telling us nobody's ever seen one. Well, explain these. Gilgamesh is famous for slaying a dragon. St. George is famous for slaying a dragon. Beowulf slew dragons, 2 of them, and then the 3rd one killed him. Tried to kill a 3rd dragon, and he killed the dragon, and the dragon killed him. They both died from the injuries from the fight. You ought to try to read the Beowulf story in Old English. Good luck. That's English from 1,500 years ago. When they translate the story to modern English, the story says, Beowulf killed Grendel the dragon by pulling off one of its arms, and the creature bled to death. Strange story. So, to me, the way I look at this, I don't see a problem. I think probably he really did kill a dragon. I think there were a few small dinosaurs still alive in 500 AD when Beowulf lived. Actually, I think they've lived all through history. If you look around, there are dragon stories from countries all over the world. Ancient pottery sometimes shows dinosaurs on it. How did they know to put those on there? Here's a piece of pottery from the first dynasty of Egypt showing two long-necked dinosaurs. This guy says nobody's ever seen one. Does he know that or does he think that? He thinks that. And I think that he thinks wrong. Here's another one showing two long-necked dinosaurs holding a sheep between their mouths. Well, all you got to do is look around and you start seeing dragon legends all over the place. Now, maybe some of them are, made up or stretched a little bit, but hey, they must have something to it. Here's a Russian medallion with a guy killing a dragon. Bulgarian postage stamp here shows a man killing a dragon. An Irish writer said they killed a dragon with iron nails on its tail. Stegosaurus certainly had like iron nails on his tail. The Vikings have legends of people killing dragons. They called him the Kraken, the great dragon of the sea. The famous Norwegian hero Siegfried slew the dragon Fafnir about 1,000 years ago. Marco Polo went to China and lived there for 17 years. When he came back, he told everybody the emperor in China is raising dragons to pull his chariots in parades. Well, now, hold on a minute. Why would he say something like that? I have a theory about that. I think he said that because the emperor was raising dragons to pull chariots in his parades. I think there were still a few alive in 1200 AD when Marco Polo went to China. There probably weren't very many, and they probably were getting pretty small by now, but I think there were a few still around. Then, dinosaurs have always lived with man. In Italy, just 400 years ago, a man killed a small dinosaur that was bothering his cows. He smacked it on the head with broke its neck. They had it stuffed and mounted for a museum display, probably a Tanystropheus from the description. We could go all day on dinosaurs, but I know you guys are anxious to get back to class. No! Did you know, when they first went down through the Grand Canyon, they found carvings of dinosaurs on the walls of the Grand Canyon. The Indians